So at the time of crafting this ramble into something at least a bit cohesive, Black Mirror's latest season, which was not high on my list of things I thought I'd see in 2023 at all, has just been released, and it's got me nostalgic for the early series. What a sentence. Nostalgic for Series 1 of Black Mirror. Probably doesn't belong on the same level as various other nostalgia bait clogging the movie and streaming scene right now, but here we are. And I had a lot of thoughts surrounding the way that Netflix handled the newer seasons, all in all, and that is absolutely not a statement to say that I hate what they've done or that Netflix have mismanaged the mission statement of what Black Mirror is. But to me, it's definitely not really been the same show anymore. What I've come to think is that the Netflix seasons are like the US version, and the earlier seasons are like the UK version. A divide that's often hit or miss. I think we can all agree. Of course, US versions can be great or better than the original UK shows that they're based on. And then, there's been some real misses as well. In Black Mirror's case, I definitely don't hold the opinion that is worse at all. I'm a little put off by the use of more recognizable actors who I end up just seeing as themselves rather than the characters they portray, but honestly, that's probably a me problem. And it's not like I can say Series 1 was full of nobodies. There's now a ton of recognizable faces in there. There's Hayley Atwell, there's Jodie Whittaker, there's Daniel Kaluuya. Hey, look, it's Daniel Kaluuya from 2017 hit Get Out. So that brings us back to the point. My main ramble about the episode that has stuck most with me all these years later, despite what Wikipedia tells me, that on critics' lists of Black Mirror episodes by quality, it generally places middling or poorly. Here's 15 million merits. Because you've obviously watched it before diving into a video about it, right? Yeah? No? Okay, well, that's actually very relatable. I get it. In any case, here's how it goes. Content warning for discussions of dissociation, sexual assault, and threats of suicide. Bingham Bing Madsen wakes up to a serenely peppy tone, like most phone alarms would know, in a room packed with screens to create one image. He sits up and a login screen with his profile appears. He goes on to brush his teeth. Another familiar activity, so we know that this is his normal reality and it's not at all distant from ours in 2011 or now. Black Mirror becomes literal as even the mirror is a screen. Shows scrolling breaking news, although if you pause to read, it's really just pop-up articles. And always on the bottom right is his profile's number. Wow, I wonder what they call it. And then, as soon as he looks up from spitting out his toothpaste, he's hit with a pornographic ad on his mirror. He swipes it away and puts in earbuds, with a Christmas #1 vibes cover of ABBA's I Have a Dream that plays as he leaves his cell to start his day. Side note, this cover isn't really on YouTube when I was looking for it to refresh my memory on the ultra-saccharine alteration, and I could not understand the comments I saw regretting a full version wasn't available. Different strokes for different folks. We're shown that in this society, people work in closed communal spaces to power their world, by riding exercise bikes all day and also to earn a currency called merit. Merits are spent on skipping ads, virtual clothes to their virtual people, and all the more obvious things, like food. Our other tiny window into this world's rules are the people Bing bikes next to. A crude self-involved man, a mild-mannered uncertain young man, and a young woman who is sensible and critical. At the risk of causing distress from revisiting Baby's first psychology, one thing I picked up on is how the three seem to correlate to the id, ego, and superego. Anyway, one day someone new arrives, Abby Khan, played by Jessica Brown Findlay, and Bing quickly finds himself developing feelings for her and her gentle, unusual habits. After hearing her singing a song he's never heard before, he encourages Abby to enter a Got Talent-style game show called Hot Shots, where judges' approval means freedom from their conditions, personal space, clothes that aren't grey jumpsuits, and no longer having to grind on a bike for merits. The price of $12 million seems a problem, till Bing explains he has the means due to his brother's death, and the transfer of his merits to Bing's account. She argues he should spend it on things himself, but he tells her, it's all just stuff, it's confetti, you've got something real. What better to spend it on? I just want something real to happen. Later, when he goes to purchase the ticket for her, he finds that the price has gone up from 12 to 15 million merits, which would almost wipe his account, but he still buys the ticket. They go to the audition together, right up to the sidelines of the stage, where she's required to drink compliance, liquid courage. It's compulsory for all attendants, and more to the point, it'll stop you puking with nerves. Abby performs Anyone Who Knows What Love Is, the song that has since become one of the big Easter eggs of the anthology series. The three judges, Hope, Charity, and Wraith, Rupert Everett, Julie Davis, and Ashley Thomas, and the crowd are clearly inspired. However, Hope states they have no more room for a merely above-average singer. Judge Wraith, a newer judge brought in to consider more of a reality viewing slant, makes sexually humiliating comments towards her and offers her a winning place as a porn star on Wraith Babes. Realistically, sweetheart, it's that or the bike. Bing tries to intervene but is dragged away and, after excitement and chanting from the judges and crowd, Abby, who has been drugged by the compliance, reluctantly agrees while Bing protests off stage. Bing returns without Abby and with very few merits left, where he continues his daily routine listlessly. One day, while playing a game in his cell, an advert for a new episode of Wraith Babes featuring Abby appears. Lacking enough merits to skip the ad, Bing tries to look away, but the automated system emits an increasingly high-pitched and louder beeping noise that only stops when he opens his eyes to look. He tries to escape into the bathroom, but the portal's disabled during commercial, and he finally breaks down, bashing one of the screens until the glass shatters. He eyes up a large shard of broken screen and the empty compliance container from Abby's audition earlier, and he gets an idea. He hides them both under his bed and spends the next several months aggressively earning merits on his bike, as well as being extremely economical, even scavenging others' unattended food in order to regain the 15 million merits to buy another Hot Shots ticket. Prior to his audition, Bing hides the shard of glass in his trousers and stands patiently in the waiting room every day without expression, until he is called in due to the judges wanting an ethnic contestant. He feigns to the stagehands that he already drank his compliance using Abby's empty container and walks on stage. Bing starts with a dance act that impresses the judges and crowd, but stops suddenly, drawing the shard of glass and pressing it to his neck, threatening to kill himself live on the show if he does not get a chance to speak. With an impatient tone, Wraith encourages him to kill himself, adding a flippant comment to not get any blood on him. But he isn't stopped from speaking. Judge Hope shouts at him to speak, so Bing speaks, in a tormented, raw burst of heartbreak at the system and what it's done to society, humanity, and to Abby.
I haven't got a speech, I didn't plan words, I didn't even try to. I just knew I had to get here, to stand here, and I knew I wanted you to listen.
To really listen, not just pull a face like you're listening, like you do the rest of the time. A face like you're feeling instead of processing. You pull a face and poke it towards the stage and la-dee-da, we sing and dance and tumble around, and all you see up here is not people. You don't see people up here, it's all fodder. And the faker the fodder is, the more you love it, because fake fodder's the only thing that works anymore. Fake fodder is all that we can stomach. Actually, not quite all. Real pain, real viciousness, that we can take. Yeah, stick a fat man up a pole and we'll laugh ourselves feral, because we've earned the right. We've done cell time and he's slacking the scum, so ha 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 at him. Because we're so out of our minds with desperation, we don't know any better. All we know is fake fodder and buying shit. That's how we speak to each other, how we express ourselves is buying shit. I have a dream. The peak of our dreams is a new hat for our doppel, a hat that doesn't exist. It's not even there. We buy shit that's not even there. Show us something real and free and beautiful. You couldn't. It'd break us. We're too numb for it. Our minds would choke. There's only so much wonder we can bear. That's why when you find any wonder whatsoever, you dole it out in meager portions, and only then till it's augmented and packaged and pumped through 10,000 pre-assigned filters till it's nothing more than a meaningless series of lights while we ride day in, day out. Going where? Powering what? All tiny cells in tiny screens and bigger cells in bigger screens, and fuck you. Fuck you, that's what it boils down to, is fuck you. Fuck you for sitting there and slowly making things worse. Fuck you and your spotlight and your sanctimonious faces, and fuck you all for taking the one thing I ever came close to anything real about anything, for oozing around it and crushing it into a bone, into a joke, one more ugly joke in a kingdom of millions, and then fuck you for happening, fuck you for me, for us, for everyone, fuck you. Instead of taking his words into consideration, all three judges praised Bing for his performance. He's offered his own platform for his criticism. Time has clearly passed, although everything continues as it was before, and we see Bing on his livestream finishing a scathing diatribe with a shard of glass to his neck. It's clearly his gimmick when, with a tonal disconnect, he encourages viewers to return next time. He now lives in a penthouse-like cell that is much bigger than his original, and the episode ends as Bing pours himself a bright glass of orange juice and stands staring out of a window spanning a whole wall into a lush, endless forest.
Yeah, stick a fat man up a pole and we'll laugh ourselves feral because we've earned the right. We've done solo time and he's slacking the scum, so ha 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 at him.
As much as I'm in the age range now where I feel like 2011 was only 2 years ago, it was in fact 12 years ago, and now the glamour of it all has significantly faded and former contestants have spoken out regarding their experiences. A lot of people now have arrived at the view that those music competition shows were pretty messed up. Talent shows in general have been categorized as an offshoot of reality TV, a distracting moniker for promoting a genre that's just as manufactured as a scripted drama, but so much cheaper by cutting out the need to hire and pay professional actors and simply exploiting people like us for being themselves. The ethical and moral deviousness of the 2000 strain of talent shows has had a wave of revisitations and critique in recent years. Now there's more awareness surrounding participants' nominal participation fees for often being manipulated and humiliated in the process. Lifetime's Unreal is a whole scripted drama show which uses the perspective of backstage reality TV as a setting to illustrate that it's impossible to be purely authentic in front of an audience, and it's equally impossible to maintain an illusion for long without beginning to fall for it yourself. In 15 Million Merits, we're shown the hotshots contestants, normal working people, being prepared to sell a dream. The scene is jarring in its lack of accompanying soundtrack, because we've likely been presented with dozens of clips of similar footage. The young hopefuls coming from underprivileged backgrounds, waiting for their time to shine. We expect things to go well for Abby because we're in a story of a story. We can see she truly is destined to leave the bike behind. We just don't know how. The jam-packed waiting room and cacophony of voices crowding Abby and Bing's ears as well as ours, with no backing track to soften it, evokes the kind of fear and anxiety of being helplessly trapped in a crowd. So we can sympathize with Abby's panic. A very obvious visual for that feeling of isolation, despite not being physically alone, and with the looming pressure of preparing for judgment. The atmosphere is less hopeful and more akin to a police lineup when Abby's told to use a sort of camcorder confessional we've seen in shows like Channel 4's Big Brother. I guess I'd like to be as big as Selma one day. A raw promotional clip to send out the message that it's people like you who worked for their fame, who worked to be seen. Judge Hope even uses this narrative to chasten and shame Abby when she hesitates to accept their offer.
Who do you think is powering that spotlight?
Millions of people, that's who. All of them, out there right now, putting in an honest day on the bike. They would give anything, do anything, to be where you are right now. Am I right? You want to cock a snook at all that as though it's nothing. As though they're nothing. And that makes me sick. No longer selling her the dream with the last winner Selma, but selling the illusion with guilt. The shaming and accusation reflects the surveillance culture influence on reality TV, and the taking pleasure from judging other people this genre indulges and encourages in its viewers. Moreover, despite the abundant encouragement of what I guess these days would call main character syndrome, the term entitled still appears to be an insult reserved most often for young women. A girl having the view that she's too good for something or someone has frequently been used to judge a girl as having a poor character and needing to be humbled, with some good Christian hard work at best and assault at worst. And ultimately, Abby is heckled and hushed into stardom on Rafe's erotica channels. We'll revisit that later. The surveillance and systemic condemnation of people not working as hard
is mostly seen throughout the episode, with the people dressed in yellow who clean all day in the biking stations. People are assigned to this position and dressed in distinguishing yellow once they have succumbed to eating mostly the cheapest sugary foods from the vending machines. Something we get the impression in the episode is the majority of the food offered and are no longer fit to bike consistently all day, leaving them unable to earn merits or to power screens. They are shunned and deemed pointless to a working society. The systemic obsession with diet and fitness to be valuable and treated as a person enforced on this level, maybe a whole other ramble about the views of humans as apart from nature and the denial of our bodies as biologically fragile, with so many manufactured images making our real bodies seem somehow inferior. But there are dozens of well-done deep dives into the horrors of 2000s diet culture and the evolving harm of body policing, so the gory details won't be a focus in this video. And to be honest, I also don't think it's a focus of the despair of the episode. However, it's made clear early on that it's a significant part of the social hierarchy when one of Bing's bike companions mocks and jeers at someone who has collapsed with overexertion from biking, with "he's gone lemon," and his main screen time whilst on the bike is mostly dedicated to wraith babes and games that dehumanize and humiliate those placed in the lowest social hierarchy for their laziness and poverty. Something we've definitely seen exploited for laughter and entertainment in talent shows and chat shows such as Jeremy Kyle, and I remember just this whole pool of reality TV that used people who were fat and working class as content. Even on more unrelated shows like Wife Swap, the fat family would clearly be signposted as the bad family. I appreciate the ruthless takedown of this genre of TV that promotes the message of help, while mostly profiting from mockery and drama. Personally, because I was just entering high school when most of these were airing on the big channels in the UK, my teen years erupted with the launches of new social media and a seismic boom of reality TV, and regrettably, I remember how these shows affected me. How it made me feel like I was so distant and so above these laughable strangers, despite the reality that someone like the people on these shows could have lived right next door to me. I am, and always was, closer to them than I ever was to the judges, even the success stories. In the confines of a screen, their stories were a product, an operation in commodification of identity, where people's physical and social traits were emphasized like their whole being was a deliberate design. Regarding this monetization of the self, you may have heard of Marx's term commodity fetishism. Summarized by the sociologicalcinema.com, commodity fetishism is the process of ascribing magic phantom-like qualities to an object, whereby the human labor required to make that object is lost once the object is associated with a monetary value for exchange. The fetish part of the term is borrowed from anthropology. Freud's usage of the term came much later, where it refers to a sacred or symbolic object that has supernatural power according to its worshippers. As consumers, we frequently don't question why something is the best or the worst. We just believe it. It just is. And this manufacturing of TV personalities works in this way to make us, the viewer, feel like we know the person. And because we know them, we can define them, we can judge them. With the literal meaning of brand in mind, reality TV pushed people to be branded with traits, and the perception of those traits became who they were. All they were. Once Hope stops the song, all the judges jump to brand Abby, using terms like pure beauty and interesting innocence. Very particular terms to use, bearing in mind they want her on the erotica channel, and say it's where she'll find the most success. After accepting this place, we see an interview of her dressed up in very cute clothes, evoking a Lolita style, and when we catch a glimpse of her at the end, her hair is blonde and doll-like, strengthening the comparison. This act of self-branding has turned out well for some. For example, the Kardashians, who've not only become a brand collectively, but have also commodified individual family members, like Kim and Kylie.
What's your question for Kylie Minogue?
Hi. Hi. What were your first thoughts when Kylie Jenner tried to trademark the name?
You may have done your best to never be exposed to who they are and what they do, but whether you like it or not, you've heard the names. You know some of what they sell. Shansby recently released a great exploration on this topic in relation to today's celebrity landscape, which I highly recommend. On the other hand, hand-picked caricatures from America's Next Top Model, What Not to Wear, etc., have not all in all found themselves able to live a comfier life through shows that featured and made bank off their presence. Even our winner, Selma, is never heard from again within the episode. But did we ever hear from her to begin with? When she was only ever a screen within a screen? Was she real? Or just a fantasy selling a fantasy? Luckily, these were big televised productions and not representations of anything an average person would do. Because obviously it's a perverse, detached thing to do to hunt down certain stereotypes, like these shows did, in order to embarrass them for the entertainment of thousands, just for your own 15 minutes of fame. Oh dear. Admittedly, you could say that a majority of Black Mirror's episodes use mob mentality and surveillance culture in particular in order to craft the episode's nightmares, and plenty focus on the terror of being spied on and persecuted by your peers in a way that make them much more effective in this regard than 15 Million Merits. But the framework of reality TV and realness pushes this episode into a bleaker space regarding the question of authenticity, just within yourself and in society at large. What's real when everything is manufactured? If your plea for help is scripted, will anybody take you seriously?
Real pain, real viciousness, that we can take.
Something real. On the 20th of August 2018, Greta Thunberg, I'm not getting off topic, please just trust me, had just started 9th grade and decided not to attend school until the 2018 Swedish general election in September. Her protest began after the heat waves and wildfires during Sweden's hottest summer in at least 262 years. Her demands were that the Swedish government reduce carbon emissions in accordance with the Paris Agreement, and she protested by sitting outside the Riksdag every day for 3 weeks during school hours. For decades, statistics have shown the trajectory of man-made global warming, and now it is making a difference to our present lives with devastating forest fires, floods, and storms. Many young climate change activists are taking a stand in an increasingly frightening time. And yet, assuming your level of onlineness, and also absolutely not to devalue her work, one of the factors that has pushed Greta to the front of our minds as the figure for action against climate change from young people is a soundbite from the 2019 United Nations Climate Action Summit. I'm sure you already know it.
How dare you!
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope? How dare you? You've stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. And yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction. And all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? You are failing us. But the young people are starting to understand your betrayal. The eyes of all future generations are upon you. And if you choose to fail us, I say, we will never forgive you. An outpouring of high-profile actors and music artists reposted and cheered on her speech. A philosopher called it the most powerful 4-minute speech I have ever heard. I've personally heard "How dare you" in a whole host of unrelated media, disconnected from its original context, completely chewed up, ground down, distorted and vomited out into fodder. And world leaders have still been failing to act, with some major carbon emitters not bothering to show up to climate action events at all. This is obviously too recent an example to have been in my mind the first time I watched 15 Million Merits, and watched Bing's pained outburst, and Judge Hope's hungry response. But in little ways and big ways, we've seen this happen a lot over the years now. Urgent calls to action, dismissed, ridiculed.
or exploited. That's how simple it is. One may dye their hair green and wear their grandma's coat all they want. Capital has the ability to subsume all critiques into itself. Even those who would critique capital end up reinforcing it instead. The world in 15 million merits is devoid of plant life or access to the open sky, and we, the audience, root for Bing to somehow escape the sad stupor of this world. In the burning lights of the hotshot stage, he sweats in a numbness not brought on by compliance, but more like an empty vessel. A ghost after he's poured out all he can say, all the while met with the exact same faces from the judges as they pulled for Abby's audition. And Judge Hope's signature suspenseful oration to say in a soft, sympathetic tone, "That was the most heartfelt thing I've seen on this stage since Hotshot began." He immediately co-opts Bing's words as a performance with placating remarks that Rupert Everett delivers with perfectly unctuous falsity. He nods and affirms that authenticity is in woefully short supply, but with a firmly casual statement that infantilizes Bing by redirecting the dialogue. It's truth, am I right? Your truth, admittedly, but truth nonetheless. Which in the context of this brings to mind all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. And with all their power and manipulative tactics, catching Bing in confusion and weakness, he accepts the offer to rant 30 minutes 2 times a week on an unnamed stream of hopes. Was it hypocritical of him? In his words, he just wanted them to listen, to really listen, in such a bleakly digital world where even when he's won freedom from the bikes, it certainly comes across as selling out when his red-headed companion is shopping with his merits for a new doppel accessory, Bing Shard. It's something he specifically called out when he finally reached the hotshot stage. We buy shit that's not even there, but now contributes to, knowingly or not. In either case, as we see him in comfort with natural orange juice, after lines earlier speculating an apple from the vending machine was probably the only thing not grown in a petri dish. With birds and trees outside, it's impossible to feel at ease. It gives the impression he's betrayed his cause for this personal advancement, and it's not even fully confirmed if he is looking at the actual outdoors, or if it's still just screens. The setting he uses for his streams is a facsimile of the cells of the bikers' lives he's left behind as part of that authentic look. I'm still just like you is this new angle of entertainment. It's almost a nesting doll's performance to the performance. It seems he's not lying when he critiques and rages against the things he does, but now that he's bought into the system that's broken him and taken away the people he loved, does it even mean anything?
Everyone wants to get it. Come on, baby. Show me what you got. Show me what. Just move. If you got to throw it, just move. It's all I want to see some movement. I'm not seeing enough movement.
With the ubiquity of social media and concurrently personalities that rise from platforms like YouTube, Twitch, and not so much these days, Instagram, becoming an online personality has become a source of income for more people than ever before. A survey in 2019 from Lego found that 1/3 of kids between 8 and 12 aspire to be either a vlogger or a YouTuber. Brands have found a lot of value in promoting their services and products by working with creators who people find relatable, who people can form parasocial relationships with. On that note, shout out to this video's sponsor, Nobody, since this is a borderline empty channel. Get yourself a little sippy of Nobody today at www.pleasehydrate-you-silly-little-raisin/Luna Mothwings. According to the National Register of Health Services psychologists, parasocial relationships are a one-sided relationship formed when one party extends energy, interest, and time, and the other person doesn't know they exist. First used in 1956, it's a term that's been a source of anxiety for people who entertain in certain spheres. It's obviously alarming when a stranger treats you too personally, recalling things you said or did and creating a narrative around you and the relationship the two of you have. The way we see Bing's live streams, through the screens of his former companions, especially the disappointed attitude of the young woman, were made further aware that there's still a personal connection there for them, despite his persistent ignorance of them throughout the episode.
Brands now take advantage of this kind of relationship to create the embedded persuasive intent and motivate customers to make purchases. And in 15 Million Merits, Bing's not promoting a specific thing. Even while criticizing it, he's promoting the system, becoming ingrained in it. Some reviews have criticized the weak world building and the episode setting, but in my view, the logic isn't as important as the message, and furthermore, the lack of insight into how on earth all these screens and cells work actively helps when exploring the surreal nature and depersonalization present in the episode. It's all just fodder, with the chilling ambiguity of the realness of the forest feud in the end. What does authenticity even mean? The asphyxiating screens and dreamlike nightmare of this world to me is perfect for transmitting that shut-in, isolated horror where, without anything to question you, all you can do is question yourself.
All the time you were on stage, couldn't help picturing you in an erotic scenario. Getting pretty turned on, if I'm honest.
All I've gone over so far is a very troubling and dark set of messages that have haunted me as they've become more relevant in the last decade. Black Mirror really does do an excellent job of showcasing the not-so-distant future of our relationship with tech in disturbing ways. But what's always been most disturbing to me personally in the whole of the episode is the fate of Abby Khan. As soon as we and Bing see her, she is distinctly lit up, like an angel-like figure with a light piano ditty that seems to wake Bing up from his emotional numbness. We discover that she is creative and hopeful, crafting origami penguins from apple wrappers, despite being well aware that she won't be allowed to keep them because they aren't allowed to own physical detritus. Although, the thing is, we see that Bing's cyclist companion, who approached him earlier with a trick to fix the vending machine, and a friendly remark that the apple he picks is probably the only thing in there not grown in a petri dish, is also a musically inclined creative. Seen when she uses a violin simulator while cycling, and he shows no interest in conversation with her. I interpret this as a sly dig at people's weakness to shallowness. Bing's shown at one point before Abby is saying yes to the Wraith Babes ad, to show he's not a model of moral purity. He's obviously not a bad guy, but it did stick with me that he chose to use the joke the cyclist told him on Abby to bond with her. Presumably because he recognized it was funny, but didn't want to interact with the first woman because she's plain? Jessica Brown Finlay is obviously conventionally attractive, but we know she's seen that way by her peers outside of just Bing, when she's ushered into the hotshot stage notably quick. One with the dark hair. The pretty one. That's not fair, I've waited here all week and she just walked in. It feels close to a sickening beauty is a curse message when Abby suffers the humiliation she's ultimately exposed to. If we do interpret that Cycle Girl was too plain to be noticed, and she shows clear jealousy when Abby is on stage during Hot Shots. But then she's also the only other woman we see whose body language and expression indicates unease as the crowd and judges cheer Abby into a life of pornography and medicated stupor. The shot focuses specifically on her watching Charity watch Abby. Many scenes are directed to have someone we know of off to the side watching a screen in a who's watching the watcher's way. And this sticks out the most to me as a familiar scenario of non-betrayal from women in power. Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss. When Hope says, I'd watch, I don't know a man here who wouldn't. Judge Charity, who we assume is straight because of heteronormativity, chimes in with a salacious encouragement that some of us girls here might join you. To Abby. The performed flirtatiousness is met by whistles and cheers from the digitally imposed crowd. The comment's hollowness is exacerbated by her earlier sneer at Abby, which accompanied Hope's verdict that if she were to be a singer, men will want you, women will hate you. Abby stands listlessly in her stupor, tears dribbling down her face before uttering a lifeless, I suppose, that signals that it's a Hot Shots win. Judge Charity stands and wipes a blatantly dry eye with graceful applause. The line between sex positivity and sexualization has become increasingly muddy. Sex positivity encourages and promotes the expression of sexuality as a healthy and natural occurrence when placed in the context of consent and autonomy. Sexualization is related to assigning sexuality to someone or something else, regardless of the subject's knowledge or consent. Various industries have indulged in the Lolita syndrome, a name derived from the 1955 novel of the same name by Vladimir Nabokov that, to summarize, focuses on the protagonist and unreliable narrator, a middle-aged literature professor who becomes obsessed with a 12-year-old girl, Dolores Hayes, whom he kidnaps and sexually abuses after becoming her stepfather. Lolita isn't her name, just one of the pet names he uses for her. After 2 successful film adaptations, the term has since been used from psychology to fashion, but is generally used to refer to the sexualization of an image evoking a prepubescent girl. Think clean, pigtails, ribbons, white clothes, doe eyes. This is the styling given to Abby when we see her in future footage of Wraith Babes, blending childlikeness with sexiness in a way that's horribly unsettling, and horribly reminding us that she is what Wraith said she would be, medicated all the time that she's on the screens, numb, submissive, and violated, for profit. In the episode's most distressing scene, Bing is out of merits and cannot skip the commercial that appears showing Abby's audition confessional and promising a viewing of her erotic debut. Bing and us cannot escape the screens that box him in, displaying a home video style scene of Abby that in the context brings to mind found footage style horror as she hazily slurs, "I'm Abby," with an unknown man's hand toying with her mouth, telling her she looks all clean. The tension builds as Bing continues to attempt escape from watching the screens, but it only glares red with an unbearable squealing tone, and the robotic demand to resume viewing. It traps him inside the cell. The tension bursts as he breaks the screens into static, but the horror and anguish stays as distorted broken screens of Abby's face on its side play unfocused behind Bing's shattered expression. A dull white noise plays as Bing sobs and weakly repeats "no," leading into the sounds of male grunting that inform us that even now Bing hasn't escaped the screens. But there's another, ghostly, distorted noise, and it's not clear if it's happening in the screens or in Bing's head. The hand-me-down song passed from mother to daughter can be heard in Abby's voice. The uncertainty of if this is in Bing's head, or if Abby is actually singing while she is drugged and her body exploited, is terrifying and upsetting. The dark satire of the episode is frequently comedic, with Rupert Everett very obviously and fantastically embodying Simon Cowell. But in this scene, and its ambiguous reality, it claws into the void of dissociation, disconnecting from thoughts, feelings, memories, because the brain just can't handle the information anymore. It's fair to say at this point we have a whole unsettling backlog in pop culture of scenes of young women styled in school uniforms and cutesy clothing with the intent to titillate. Through the years, we've seen many music industry cycles in which girls between 12 and 18 years of age have been explicitly sought out and capitalized on their authentic youth and naivety. Natalie Portman, Billie Eilish, Lindsay Lohan, Emma Watson are among just a handful of celebrities who were subjected to an online countdown for when they turned legal to sexualize. 15 Million Merit's Hotshots is blatantly alluding to X Factor, which in its later seasons implemented an over 25s category that really distinguishes youth as value. You maybe know this already, but with this context, I'd like to slip in the reminder. Harry Styles was propelled to global success through One Direction, a group formed by Simon Cowell during the 2010 series of X Factor. Originally composed of Niall Horan, Liam Payne, Harry Styles, Louis Tomlinson, and Zayn Malik, who entered the singing competition as individual acts. All boys were between 16 and 18 years old. In the competition, they placed third, but ultimately received half a decade of megastardom. The official winner of this season was 27-year-old Matt Cardell, who has comparatively vanished. Yes, the relevant example I pulled pertains to male stars, but regarding where we are with the female experience today, the frightening obsession with physical youth in girls has been noted by many, particularly how it's manifested through TikTok,
And I am not trying to pull a TikTok evil with these observations. A lady never tells her age is a saying we've probably all heard somewhere, or at least a variation of. But visual influences of glossy, filtered, short-form content has and is inevitably warping young people's thoughts on what a face and body is supposed to look like. Even through the continued use of adults portraying teenagers in media and the more diverse representation of bodies and positivity people and brands praise today. Anti-aging is a tag that has 5.1 billion views on TikTok. And again, I need to point out this isn't the app's problem at its roots. Anti-aging myths and practices have existed for millennia in all sorts of twisted forms. Like, at least we are not being told to pull an Elizabeth battery and bathe in the blood of our virginal maids to preserve our youthful features. Because that's problematic. Data from Plan International UK in 2018 showed 35% of girls have received unwanted sexual attention while wearing school uniform. It includes being groped, stared at, catcalled and wolf-whistled. In May 2022, the UK's Office for National Statistics reported that 1 in 2 women between 16 and 34 experienced one form of harassment in the previous 12 months, with 38% having experienced catcalls, whistles, unwanted sexual comments or jokes, and 25% having felt that they were being followed. As discussed, film and music industry's involvement in styling young stars to be doll-like with the intention of erotic marketing has been around for some time now. But these industries have historically been male-led. Far more recently, however, there's been a rise in glamorization and fetishization that is female-led. Self-led. Singer-songwriter Lana Del Rey has received criticism for her romanticized aesthetic and lyrics referencing Lolita, ambiguously enough to be interpreted as a love story. Online creator Belle Delphine has explicitly capitalized on sexualizing herself in this manner, at times earning north of $1 million a month. As much as the agency has changed hands, the cultural power still takes advantage of those who are young and most vulnerable to manipulation. Judge Charity's shepherding of Abby Khan is delivered so ghoulishly. The quality of the acting with Julia Davis' affectations of emotional investment is skin-crawling. The dry eye and the clapping. Peppers in affectionate monikers like love and sweetheart, with a motherly tone, yet at the same time rolls her eyes in tired amusement at Wraith's crass heckling at Abby to take her top off for him. There's an assumed safety in the presence of women, and an assumption that someone like Charity, who sits equally with Hope and Wraith, wouldn't allow another woman to be treated that way. She, like many privileged women, ultimately sees herself as above the problems faced by other women. So removed from social struggle, she can confirm her jealousy at Abby's looks one moment, then masquerade attraction to her the next, and then finally cheer her into a lifetime of glossily packaged pornography. Sex positivity in the facade of sexualization. Hello, it's Editing Luna again to say that I got my lines the wrong way round in my own script. I meant to say sexualization in the facade of sex positivity. That's the right way round. Thank you. Even when we've seen this dynamic before, it's still gut-twisting to see how ultimately in this machine of exploitation, Charity is passive, Hope is cruel, and Wraith can only prosper from exploiting the bodies of others. The quality of acting, set design, and the plot's complex cocktail of alienation, isolation, and exploitation were so impactful to me that it was honestly very tough watching the episode repeatedly. To revisit in clarity the scenes and concepts that have oozed around my brain in a cloud of misanthropy and despair. And yet 15 million merits poignancy 12 years later is weirdly comforting. A whole team of people worked on a shoestring budget to give attention to cultural anxieties and horrors in a way that ultimately
tells me that isolation is a shared feeling. Maybe we can be lonely together. You can blame me, try to shame me, and still I'll care for you. You can run around, even put me down, still I'll be there for you. The world may think I'm foolish, they can't see you like I can. Oh, but anyone who knows what love is will understand. Bit warm, innit? Good golly, thanks for coming to my video on my borderline empty YouTube channel. This channel was an extension of my Twitch stream shenanigans, but for a long while now I've wanted to make pop culture videos like shows and movies and video game critique. It's a free internet and nobody can stop me. So I'm gonna stop being shy and silly about it and just do it. It starts here. When talking about the sex work angle, it was a fine line to tread, and I felt like I had to be really careful not to make it seem like I'm against sex work. I am not. Sex work is legitimate work and people should be free to partake in it. But it's tough framing when there's been an element of glamorization of some of the most successful on these platforms, leading to some young people putting themselves in vulnerable positions, not aware that they're of the challenges and the risks that come with the work. And also, it was off topic for the video, but I also want to say I do not think there's anything wrong with indulging in girlish things, expressing yourself in cutesy clothing and like wanting to express yourself that way and have fun with it. The wretched fact is, every style of expression has been sexualized on women at some point. John Teresa has a great video discussing the comforts of this kind of expression, and her channel also dives into how messed up reality shows were if you're like me and kind of morbidly addicted. I mostly get by on what I earn from streaming games on Twitch as well, so a lot of what's discussed here is kind of close to me personally, so I really hope that I've done it justice. Speaking of, thank you so much to anyone from my Twitch community who's come over and watched this, like, right up to this point. Thank you, always, but thank you very, very much for joining me in this new venture of content creation. Jesus, did my shoulder just click? Anyone who's seeing this and doesn't know me from Twitch, I chat and play games over there 4 to 5 days a week, and it's a less of a serious vibe. I could not do this content 4 to 5 days a week, but we do talk about things of this kind over there as well, so come drop by if you fancy it. Various industries have indulged in the Lolito syndrome,